So when my dad finally bought the Commodore 64 from a friend of his, he got it with a bunch of games and, well, a bunch of discs, like 2 shoe boxes of discs. Not all of them were games, some of them were programs, some of them were clips, some of them were advertising material, some of them were just system files for some of the other discs he used. The vast majority of them, I couldn't tell you what they were. They had files on them, but I have no idea what they were. But among them were games, and among them were also those promotional things. So I saw Ultima 1, and Ultima isn't really, or Ultima, I don't know how you would pronounce that these days, Ultima or Ultima. Okay, you're back for more. And I didn't get to see the game and play the Ultima 1 game, but I did get to load and see the promotional image for the first Ultima. Yeah, figured they would run away. Okay. And it was kind of ridiculous because back then I didn't know what a promotional ad is. I didn't know what an advert really meant. I was a small boy back then, and me and my brother would load this thing. It's called Ultima, and it would take 30 minutes to load because back then that Commodore 64 was already an aging machine when we had it. 30 minutes of loading, we type in /RUN, enter, and it runs, and it says Ultima, and it looks pretty. It's a beautiful animated image with 8-bit music playing in the background, and it looks awesome. But it doesn't do anything. And why doesn't it do anything? Because it's not a game. It's just promotional advertisement for a game. And it would run like a text of what you could expect from the game and what's in the game. You know what, the stuff that you see on promotional blurbs these days. But back then it was on a disc, and you had to invest some of your time to even see it. Needless to say, that kind of promotional didn't last for long, but it did came back. So after CDs became a thing and it became very easy to burn data into discs, you had a return of that kind of promotion. It was called a demo disc, where developer would take us axed version of the game or a severely locked version of the game and supply it with a magazine, and you could play like first 2 levels or just the first level, or sometimes even the full game if you managed to hack it. The first level of Doom was shareware. It was installed. Oh, there we go. There's aliens. It was installed on as many PCs as there was Windows. It was that much of a significant thing. So now right-click does attack him immediately. I don't get this. Sometimes when I right-click, it just gives me the prompt that it can be attacked, and sometimes it actually attacks. I don't know what's the difference, but yeah, we have an unconscious person. So the aliens were coming from here, so I should probably clear out this area first. Well, there probably aren't there any left in here. Yeah, there aren't. Perfect. But there's there. again, it doesn't, now when I right click on a white field, it doesn't give me the option to immediately attack, it just lets me select an attack. That's something that this game needs to improve. Okay. Kill everything! I wish I had a flamethrower. Flamethrower. Developer, that's something you need to add to the game. Flamethrowers. There we go. Will you pick him up? It's funny how there is a different sprite when somebody's being carried. It's that generic astronaut dead body sprite. It sometimes shocks me how far we've come. This is something that newer generations of players will... Well, they will be experiencing it, and you as a player will be experiencing these same emotions, but not in the same way that we did. Because the improvements to the games now are more in the terms of execution rather than quality. We've reached the point of almost photographic fidelity, and some would argue complete realistic fidelity, to the point where the only improvements left to be made are actual execution, VR, augmented reality, even though that's not really that much of a big deal, to be honest. You can now have a game which looks exactly as you as developer want to be, as cartoony as you want it to be, or as realistic looking as you want it to be. You can make something to be almost photorealistic, or you can have something which is completely and utterly cartoony and stylized, 2-bit, 8-bit, 16-bit, 2D, 3D, 2.5D as you want. So the problems that and the growth that was leading up to this point is not going to be so major anymore. Back in the 80s and 90s, every graphical jump was significant, it was visible, it was shocking. I mean, if you are younger, if you now see something that was made in 1980s or 70s, or even 1990s, you see it and you just see a blocky mess, you see rough shapes, and for you that's but for us, when we were growing up, for us older gamers, when we first played Starfighter, or when we played the first MechWarrior, when we saw things moving from the 2D into the 3D plane, despite how rudimentary it was. I mean, Starfighter was a triangle, well, a pyramid, technically speaking, flying through other triangles and lines. That was literally it. But for us, it was amazing. It was revolutionary. Up to that point, the games were, oh my god, just look up some early Amiga or Atari games and you'll know what I talk about. The Action 21, just to Google that and you'll see what I mean. Or Action 51, I can't remember what it was. And then almost on a yearly basis, you would get these amazing jumps in graphics. What came from advancements in 2D graphics to later on to advancements in 3D graphics. It was such a major improvement from Doom to Duke Nukem 3D, then to games like Command & Conquer, and then Half-Life, well, Quake to Half-Life to Quake 2 to what was significant after that. I mean, so many games could be arguably very significant. Black and White, Black and White franchise is almost forgotten, but that was the first one that had an interactive AI that could actually interact with you as a player. You had an avatar there that you were actually raising, that responded not to your direct commands but to your stimulus. You could train it to behave in a certain way, and that was revolutionary. And we were growing up with those advancements. These days, well, just look at it. What advancements have you seen? What is the advancement of Call of Duty from last year, Modern Warfare, to Call of Duty Cold War? What is the advancement? Not from just for a graphical standpoint, but from a mechanical standpoint. What is the advancement? Another fire. In certain ways, games like this, like Space Haven or Factorio, are more... I mean, why don't you fight the fire properly, please? These kinds of games are actually more impressive because they are flexible enough to go along with whatever you want to go and do within the parameters of the game. We are now living in a gaming culture where franchises run amok without actually innovating, and we let companies get away with almost no effort put into it, and we still buy their games, which is probably part of the problem, to be honest. You look at games. I don't really want to mention Cyberpunk in this context because the developers of Cyberpunk care a lot. They were just put in a very bad position. But it's the same problem everywhere. It's no longer the developer that cares about the project. That's why we have truly remarkable games coming from small and independent studios, because they care. Every game coming from an indie studio or for a small studio like Space Haven comes from somebody who has a passion for the project, from somebody who is in it more for the money, who wants to see their creation live. Among many things I did in life, and I say that with a big quotation mark, I'm an artist, and I did some game designs. I did some artwork for the Red Solstice game, which is on Steam. Feel free to check that out. I made some of the artwork for the monsters running in that game. And let me tell you, seeing the things that you put on paper run and move and perform in the ways that you want to see, and thinking, that is my creation. That creation now lives. It has literally a virtual life. That is amazing. It's amazing to see, it's amazing to experience, and developers are like that. For you, a game is something that you purchase, you play for an hour, for 2 hours, for 100 hours, and you leave it in a memory. It's... why aren't you jumping? What's the problem? But for a developer, keep that in mind, for a developer, these things are a lot more than that. To be able to envision something and then work on that creation slowly until it takes shape the way that you want it to, that is probably something that's amazing on a level that you can't explain to somebody who hasn't tried anything like it. To create something and see it come to life, that is joy. That is joy in this world. And developers Of course, a lot of developers care about the money, and they should. I mean, they're not charity organizations. But most developers really want to see that their vision, that their project, that their child, their virtual child has been embraced by the community. They want to see that. They want to see that they've created something wonderful, something that will be remembered by the player fondly, something that the player will be coming back to. And that's why it's such a shame that this magnificent medium, where you can literally envision anything at all, and it's more than a movie and it's more than a book, it lets you experience something firsthand, as fantastical as you want it to be, and it follows your direction. And that medium is now almost completely run by big business. And big business doesn't care about the product. That's why you see games coming out incomplete. Not because the developers didn't want to finish them, not because the developers were sloppy. Even Bethesda, for most of you, started with either Skyrim or one of the Elder Scrolls. Do you know what Bethesda started with for me? Future Shock. That's a Terminator game. And it was one of the most revolutionary games of its time when it was initially released. It was buggy, as most Bethesda games are, but it was revolutionary. It was one of the first ones to have an actual interactive 3D map, for one thing. And many things that we now see in games like Borderlands started with Future Shock. That's because Bethesda cared, back then at least, about their product. And even though there were some glitches in the game, it was perfectly playable, it was fine. It wasn't that difficult to run, it wasn't difficult to enjoy, it was very simple, it was very good. And we liked it. We all enjoyed it. And then big business came along. And if you want to have something of quality, leave big business out of it. Because the moment publishers came along, or the moment they saw that this could be a profit, the moment that gaming became more profitable than Hollywood, that's where you started to see the loss of vision, the loss of quality, the loss of kind of the loss of everything. The dream was lost. So today, if you want to see a game that is a marvelous, that is unique, that's something new, you really have to look at the small ones, the independent ones, the indie ones, the ones that are not afraid to experiment, that are not afraid to foster their vision the way that they want to, and present it to us in the way that they wanted us to see it. And then, at some point, then later on, you can then ask the gamers, how would you like us to improve it? As long as the big business is the one and we're letting them do it, because let's be honest, it's us, the people who actually buy the product, that dictate these kind of things. As long as we keep buying the product, nothing will change. We're gonna live to see Call of Duty 999 before anything changes, because there is no reason to. The formula works, and even a bad Call of Duty will be sold in millions of copies. As long as the profit margin is there, there will be no change. Okay, so which system next? This one. Crystal and more pirates there. Oh, that's the same ones that have been running away from us. Maybe if they come close, we'll shoot them out of the sky. They probably recovered some of the shields by now, though. I didn't transfer any... Yeah, I didn't transfer any of them. Energy cells, let's make 10. Oh, there they come. So let's do this. Fast. We have 2 derelicts here to explore, and if these guys are still damaged, there'll be a 3rd derelict to explore here. You might think I'm very melancholic about games, and I am, because it takes a lot more these days to ignite that spark that's there when you have a truly great product. Don't get me wrong, there are still great games being made all the time. It's just that they're further in between these days, and pretty much every developer that knows they can get away with something does it. Because it works. Have you seen how many crappy games, or not even non-games, are on Steam? Products which shouldn't be even referred to as games, they should be referred to as somebody's pet project, somebody that did something for school and decided to upload it online. Those kinds of things. Have you seen how many of them are there? If you haven't, it's amazing. Just go to Steam and put in and sort the games by the least popular ones. So the ones that have the worst reviews, the one the mostly negative or completely negative. And you'll see what I mean. No, there is no truce here. That's what I figured. Yeah, there are games on Steam which shouldn't be on Steam in any way, shape, or form. What do I mean by that? Well, these quote-unquote games are not in playable status, they're not even in finished status, they're not even in alpha status. They're essentially something that somebody cobbled together using just assets from game-making software and just published it. In a way that doesn't make sense to me, because I always believe that Valve tests things before it lets something be published on them. There is a massive difference between an early access game and just something that's cobbled together in an afternoon. And there are games like that out there. And they are pretty much the worst. If there's anything worse than what the publishers are turning the games industry into, it's pretty much the people who are just taking the piss and just publishing anything because they can. So it is a problem from both sides of the aisle, but it's nothing unsolved, and that's what's frustrating. It's nothing that can't be fixed. If there was just some accountability, if there was just some, just somebody giving a damn. But again, as long as it's earning money, nobody's really gonna turn away from that. So, and that makes me happy that things like indie developers and early access and people who make games like Space Haven exist. Games like Satisfactory, even high-profile games like Doom Eternal. We had to wait, 15 years to get a proper Doom sequel? No, not 15 years, 20 years to get a proper Doom sequel. Proper sequel to Doom 2. Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal are the first proper Dooms since the original Doom 1 and 2. in Final Doom, if you want to count that, but I don't, for personal reasons. So it can be done, and it does get made, but it's frustrating how much time has to pass before you can show to, not even the developer knows this, to the publisher, that if you just leave the publisher, leave the developer alone, and they will make a proper game. Oh crap! I left it on high speed, and there are fat boys in here. Fortunately, we survived, but Jericho is bleeding. Okay, I'm gonna take a risk and I'm gonna continue. But Jericho really should go and get some medical attention. I'm gonna monitor his state there. It's not that easy to kill a character in the game. Thank you for that hot shot. I, of course, will. The only reason I stopped was because my internet was... And I need to learn how to turn off the blood notifications popping up in the right corner of my monitor. I have so many plans for the streams, but the sad reality is that I will have to temper myself, and I will have to invest a lot more before I can do them. The dream is that I can stream every single day, or at least most of the week, but that's for some few. Okay, I think I'm being way too reckless. And why is Jericho, the one who's wounded the most, going first? No! I just purposely selected only 3 of you. Hotshite, I hope that you can hear me well, because I'm kind of... Hotshite, yes, and I know, and believe it or not, it is currently on game capture. The problem is, I've been doing some messing around, and I have... I think I've added too many scenes, so that's something I will have to play. Essentially what happened over the course of Christmas and shortly before my internet went to hell, I got some new equipment, and I was running a lot of setups and kind of messed up a few things. My last stream of Factorio actually didn't have any audio. So that was unfortunate. But it's fine now, I hope. I have a mic, a proper mic now. I have a better sound setup now. I have the monitors plugged properly and everything. So it is a lot better now. It's more quote-unquote professional than it was. I feel more professional anyway. I still have a lot to learn, my friend. Okay, so transfer all of this to Mira, and then we're gonna transfer it to Roxanne if they need anything. Salvage, soft, tech, energy, and hull. Perfect. Thanks, Hotshite. I'm happy to hear that. It should be damn be well enough, considering that I'm actually using a proper mic before. So you also won't hear me sigh and breathe all the time, which was something I noticed on my own recordings before, and nothing really good about that. It was the headset on my, it was the microphone on the headphones. Now, if I manage to get the Dyson Sphere project next week, it will really depend on what the price of it is when it comes out. Then this will be the last Space Haven stream for a while, and we will explore the Dyson Sphere project. If the game costs more than I think it will, because it is an early alpha thing, then it will have to wait until the end of the month, and there will be another Space Haven stream. But I will put a notifications to my Twitter, if so you can check that out. Because I do put, that's probably something I should probably put more prominently somewhere, that actually have a Twitter where I put all the notifications about what's going on in the channel, both the YouTube and Twitch. I just didn't for some reason. I am plastering it now on the, oh freak, I didn't see the pirates were coming, and now they're here. Are we actually automatically attacking them? I think we are, but since I already started nipping them here, I'm gonna continue to nip them here. And these rockets are dealing more damage since... Oh, decline peace treaty. You either jump out or you get blown up. And they get blown up. Okay, so now we'll see what these guys will do, because they might try to board me. Okay, well, that's the pirates. Okay, so they didn't try to board me, which is a good thing. The question still remains why that isn't a thing. I mean, I'm happy that they don't try to board me, but, you know, they have shuttles, they have guns, they have manpower. So they should be boarding me. Yeah, Hotshot, I agree. It's oh, not a fire. Yeah, Hotshot, it does look like it might be a $20 or $30 game, considering how good it looks. I mean, it looks magnificent. But we will see, because it's early access. I'm not really clear on how early it is. Because when I saw the previous trailer, it was supposedly that it's a beta demo, but the last trailer, I believe, mentioned it was an alpha release, like, or just an early access. I'm not sure. I've seen that there are demos from previous year, from the previous build, but it didn't go all that deep into it, so I don't know. Why are... Okay, there is a requirement of some more fuel rods being transferred to Roxanne, because they've run out of power again. I do need to make more of these power cells. Yeah, Dyson Sphere looks amazing, and I'm definitely gonna be streaming it the moment I get my hands on it. So that will be definitely what's gonna be replacing the Space Haven. And then for Sundays after Factorio, we will be moving on to either Scrap Mechanic or Satisfactory. I'm gonna check which one has had more content updated. I believe that Scrap Mechanic has more at the moment, but I could be wrong. Also, I'm hoping to get some of my friends to co-op with me, like I mentioned before, so that's a plan. We'll see how that turns out. Messing around in... I mean, whenever possible, I do want to do that. If I ever make a new gameplay stream of Factorio, I will also be using co-op. Because survival games are fun solo, but they truly come alive when you're playing it with friends, when you actually have other people playing with you. I've recently started replaying Minecraft again, and I've made a solo world because I didn't want to go through the excruciating process of finding a decent server. I know there are millions of servers for Minecraft out there. I've played on over 100 of them, and because each time I go into Minecraft I decide to build something that is ridiculously huge, I have to pick a server where I can actually stay for a considerable duration of time without worrying of losing my progress. So I didn't feel like doing that again for the nth time or since Minecraft exists. So I created a solo world. And it just isn't the same. It's still fun. I still enjoy it. I still do it. And I built a lot of what I was wanting to build. But it's not the same. That's another game I was thinking of replacing, but I don't have that game yet, Hotshite. Raft is, again, and consider that Raft is more current and more popular at present, I might actually play Raft in stream as well and just invite my friends to play that along with me. It remains to be seen. That's always the worst thing when you only stream for 2 days. You have to pick a game. You have to pick what are you going to dedicate the next 10, 15 Sundays and Wednesdays to, and it can be sometimes more challenging. The choice. It's a good thing I actually record playthroughs and stuff for my channel regardless of that, and I've been told that I should actually, instead of doing playthroughs with no commentary, I should record them with commentary. I'm kind of on a fence about that, but I am considering it. Because I will be covering more games than just the playthroughs I record than on stream, just because of the nature of how it is and because how different it is. And why is there another fire? Seriously, fires all over the place. Give me that, and might as well give me this. What do I... Well, I don't need 8 shotguns. I also don't need this. There we go. Raft is... It's amazing that some of the games that are not that interesting early on, when they enter early access, they become a lot of fun later on. Mostly because initially they lack focus, you know? For example, oh, so we're done with this one. Okay, so we are going to go to the next derelict next morning. Okay, draft them up. Raft is one of those games. Raft was not very interesting for me early on in its development. It was just a game where you build a raft and that was pretty much it. You had some things to build, but not that many, and it grew stale very quickly. Now with both the exploration factor and some other factors that were added to the game, it's a lot of fun. Scrap mechanic was like that as well. It originally only had creative mode, and the same was true also for Terratech. And now that those games actually have proper campaigns and actual proper survival modes, at least Scrap Mechanic does, they are a lot of fun. I actually only got Terratech and the Scrap Mechanic after the release of the campaign and survival mode for the Scrap Mechanic. And the Raft is like that too. I'm only getting interest in Raft now that it actually has content more than just the basics. And the basics were just you're floating, you're collecting driftwood, and you're building up more raft to grow trees on. Now it's a lot more, a lot deeper than that. And I like that. But that's another glorious things about early access is you can choose when you jump aboard. And if you see the potential in a game, you can start up early and join right away. And if you don't, you can just leave it alone and see where it goes and then jump in later as it becomes more. Seeing the game being developed is always, at least for me, a very good selling point, and I need to switch this track because it's literally somebody drumming on my head. Okay. Okie dokie. Undraft. Undraft you. Let them do what they want, and let's get this salvage out. What do you have? Some food, some building materials, some rods, please. Yes, thank you. Soft scrap, deck, energy, and hull. Give me all of those. Let me check what's the cargo situation on our main ship. If I can find it, there it is. Yeah, now that we are not smothered with organic material, we actually have enough room to store things. We were swimming in poop. Now I have too many of these. Should probably remove them. There's no point in having all of them. The only reason I had so many of them is because I had so much poop to go through. Now, not so much. I'm also thinking of doing theme streams, as in playing games with a specific theme for specific times of the year. For example, during Halloween, during the Halloween month, we would play horror games, and during holidays, we would play games that were either specific for the holiday or, just holiday inspired. Problem is there's not that many of them, and for Halloween it's easy, you just pick a horror game, which is very amusing to see me play because I have lost my nerve to play horror games a long time ago. But for holiday, other than that, not that many. There aren't any Easter games, and even Christmas games are not that prominent, to be honest. There usually is a Christmas level for Christmas edition for something. Not that much. As far as horror games are concerned, I used to love them. I used to eat up horror games like crazy. Resident Evil and I'm trying to think of horror games before Silent Hill, because Silent Hill is where everything went downwards. For me, not because the games are awesome. It's a different matter entirely. So Alone in the Dark, and then there was The Evil Dead, which could arguably be said as horror. The first one, not the second one. The second one was just an action game. And there were some obscure horror games you probably never heard of, so I'm not gonna bother you with those. But I experienced a proper horror game when the first Silent Hill came about. Looking at the Silent Hill now, most people will say it's not scary because it's so dated. But you just, again, if you didn't grow up with it, you can't understand what kind of a seismic shift that was. Until Silent Hill came along, a horror game was simply a game with some blood in it and maybe a jump scare. Resident Evil 1 and 2, for example, the scary parts in that game were not the parts with the zombies. Those were simply the parts where the game was really tense. The scary parts were simply you exploring the mansion, exploring the Raccoon City, with that ominous music playing in the background. That's what was scary. That's what got us unnerved. Just the zombies? Not really, no. They weren't really scary, and it was just fun to shoot them. But then Silent Hill came along, and that was a seismic shift, because it wasn't just... you weren't fighting some predictable monstrosity. You didn't go against zombies. You didn't go against, I don't know, Dracula or anything like that. No, the monsters you encountered were disturbing. They were obscure. They were really, they were grotesque. they didn't really look like, you couldn't really see them, and what you thought they looked like, you tried to say, no, it can't possibly look like a beaten corpse inside of a straitjacket. That would be absurd. Oh my god, that's actually what it is. So that was a trip, going through that. And of course the music and the town of Silent Hill itself, it was nothing that you've experienced until then. So it was really, really something special, something new, and it was actually properly freaky and scary. And it kept going like that. I was still loving it back then. And then Silent Hill 2, probably by most people considered to be the best of the Silent Hills, just pushed that boundary even further. And for me, it all came to a head with the last proper Silent Hill, which is the, for me at least, The Room. The Room freaked me out so much I gave up on horror games and I don't like them anymore. Because The Room had so many freaky, scary, creepy scenes in it that I just gave up on horror games. Oh yeah, Hotshot. That's pretty much the experience. Phasmophobia is one of the rare games which I would say it's actually properly scary, and it's properly scary because it doesn't do the horror tropes. It doesn't simply give you a jump scare. It doesn't give you some tried and tested method of just putting blood everywhere and gore everywhere and then just putting you in the middle. No, it actually puts you in an atmosphere, and that atmosphere feeds feeds on everything. And that's magnificent. That's beautiful to see. Phasmophobia is one of the first proper horror games in a long, long time. For me, the last truly horrifying game was, like I said, Silent Hill: The Room. And for those who haven't played Silent Hill: The Room, the game is full of scenes that just catch you by surprise. There is an enemy, for example, in the game that's essentially two babies inside of a cloak that are huge, and they're walking on two large arms. And when you spot them, they don't attack you. They stand in the corner, they point at you and whisper something. And until you get closer to them, they still don't attack you. And when you get closer to them, they start crying like babies and then attack you violently. It was disturbing, it was creepy, it was scary as hell, and I wished I'd never witnessed it in my life. Then there were these haunted episodes where you would be back in your apartment and your room would be haunted. And these hauntings weren't exactly obvious. The hauntings were some horror tropes, for example, seeing something dripping out of the refrigerator, and then you open it, there's something blood inside, and it's crying, and which is disturbing as it is. But some of the less obvious hauntings were when you would randomly look through the window, and you would see a ghostly face slowly creeping up against the glass in front of you for no reason whatsoever, and you would shit your pants. Those kinds of things. Then there were the hauntings where there would be a random face appearing in the window, not the window, in the mirror. So you would look in the mirror and it would look perfectly fine. Then once randomly, it would just be a random disfigured face, or more like distorted face, and it would creep you out. Then there is a little hole in the wall where you are spying on your neighbor, and you can just see the edge of the bed, and on the edge of that bed there is a little pink fluffy bunny. And throughout the game, when you look at it, the bunny is completely silent and steady, and you expect it to jump up on you, but he never does. Until near the end of the game, you look through the peephole and that little fluffy bunny is staring at you with a cold dead stare and pointing his little fluffy finger at you. He is not moving, he's not jumping at you, he's just looking at you and pointing. And that, my friends, is as creepy and freaky, and it made me shiver. No fireworks, no gore, no blood, just a disturbing scene like that is enough to say, okay, I'm done for the game with the games for now. Silent Hill 4 freaked me out so much one night that I waited for dawn because I didn't want to go to sleep while it was night outside. And I wasn't exactly a kid back then anymore. That's how much it freaked me out. And for many people, Silent Hill 4 The Room isn't the scariest or the most disturbing, but for me it was the straw which broke the camel's back, and I wasn't able to enjoy horror games after that point anymore. I have Resident Evil 7 in VR at home. I can play it at any time. I got to the front door of the house and I said, screw this shit, I'm out. Because playing that in VR just through the intro part was too traumatic for me. I simply lost the edge for horror games. I can't handle them anymore. So forcing myself to play a horror game in October, I think it will be amusing for people because I will be out of my goddamn mind. Because I can't. I think some of my friends will probably make me play Phasmophobia with them, and I'll be streaming that, and I'll be crapping my pants more than likely. Also, I hear now that Phasmophobia is available for VR. Which sadist did that? I don't know, but I mean that's proper horror. That's proper horror. That's slowly removing that blurred line between what's virtual horror and what's real horror. But for me, everybody has a line. Everybody has a line that they can enjoy a certain thing into, and then when you cross that line, you get to the point where you're like, oh okay, I can't handle this anymore. I need to move away from this. This is now just upsetting me. For me, Silent Hill 4 was the point where I was said, nope, walking away now, walking away, not looking back. I don't need this thing. I did pass Silent Hill 4 completely before I turned away because I'm a completionist and the game had to be completed before I stopped. And considering that some of the scenes you only see when you go for all of the endings, I probably shouldn't have done that, because even the endings, well, out of the 5 endings or 6 endings, 3 of them are very creepy. So I didn't do myself any favors doing that. Not one bit at all. There was another. I'm just remembering all the creepy scenes from Silent Hill 4 now. At one point you are going through a hospital, because of course you are. It's Silent Hill. There was bound to be at least one hospital in a Silent Hill game. I was just checking if I'm still recording because I'm paranoid against that. This ship still has a lot of stuff to be taken from. And one of the scenes in the room was, as you were walking through the hospital, you would at one point run into these enemies, which were essentially ghostly wheelchairs, which in itself isn't very original. I mean, it's a trope; it's been used 100 times in movies and games. But what was done differently here is, in one of the rooms you would see one of these wheelchairs parked against the wall, and it would be not moving, The other ones would be moving and even attacking you, but this one wasn't moving. And there was a light next to it, and it was projecting a shadow of a person being all jittery, getting up from the chair and getting back in it. And because at that point you are in a tiny room right next to it, it's a very unnerving thing to see, and a very unnerving thing to, because you don't know if that means that this ghastly figure, this shadow, will actually turn out to be an enemy, or if it's just there. And that's after PT, which is a shame was never completed. Silent Hill went completely and utterly to crap. I blame it on moving into Western development, because I'm very sorry, but Western developers, that is Europe and United States, do not know how to make a proper horror game. I'm sorry. Western developers can make a proper fantasy game, they can make a proper fighting game, they can make a proper shooter, but when it comes to horrors, horror games made by Western developers suck. Silent Hill, Downpour, Origins, all made by Western developers, they sucked hard. They weren't scary, they weren't freaky, they were recycling so many things. I mean, in the first 4 Silent Hills were full of symbolism. Enemies were designed in a specific way for a reason. Later on, as development was moved to the Western developers, Silent Hill was simply another fire. Is it in the kitchen again? No, it's this bloody thing. Stop setting my ship on fire. As it moved to the Western development, they recycled a lot of the enemies and concepts which were popular instead of original, instead of symbolic, and that made it so much worse. For example, everybody is familiar with the iconic nurses that appeared first in Silent Hill 2, and that they were voluptuous, they had sexy bodies. But there was a reason for that in Silent Hill 2, because that was the symbolism of both James Sunderland's frequent stay in hospital because of his wife's illness, as well as his sexual frustration because of, again, from his wife's illness. That was embodiment of that. Every single... Oh geez, that's way too loud. Every single enemy in Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3 and 4 and 1, they had a particular... Again, stop setting my... You set fire to the kitchen again. You morons, how do you manage to set the kitchen on fire again? Anyway, what I was saying. Ah yes, the enemies in Silent Hill. They all had specific symbolism behind them. And later on, as it was moved to the Western development, it was just recycled because it was popular. So every Silent Hill had to have sexy nurses. Every Silent Hill had to have at least some version of the Pyramid Head, or some other trope used in Silent Hill before then. And that was just the end of it. A part of the horror in Silent Hill games was that you didn't know exactly what you were fighting, and what you were seeing was disturbing. It was unnerving. Later Silent Hills that were made by the Western developers, they aren't scary, and the enemies are not disturbing. They're generic. They're boring. They're just run-of-the-mill ghouls. They're nothing special. They're not. Those are not horror games anymore. They're just somebody got hold of the IP and they're just made a bunch of really, really bad versions of the original game. That's what it is. It's not worth. It's not worth the medium on which it was delivered on. It just isn't. And whoever likes those later Silent Hills, power to you, and I'm happy you enjoy it. But for me, they were an utter disappointment. You could hear the recollections in my voice from what I described from those previous games. Oh, we can move on with our life from this system. That's one pirate less in the system as well. I think the only pirate in the system too as well.